So we already went through the design board challenge for whiteboarding, but now this company wants you to take home an exercise and do for them. Nervous? Don't be. Let's talk about it. So for this second video on design challenges, we're going to be going over take-home challenges. Unlike whiteboarding challenges, this is going to give you more time where you can flesh out your designs. You could probably even make a prototype or some wireframes. And if you don't know something about an industry, you could always Google it to get yourself to the answer that you need. They're a little bit different on how you would approach it, especially because you have a little bit more time. So I would just judge how long you have from the day that you get the assignment until the end, and maybe provide yourself half hour to an hour a day or so to just be like, you know what, this is enough time to roughly allocate. This is just something more to mentally prepare, but you don't have to be strictly on, okay, this is 5 days away, I have to spend 5 hours on this. You're just giving yourself time to go over it, work on it, and just have fun with it, honestly. So just like we did for the whiteboarding challenge, we're going to go over some points that they're really looking for through these interviews. One of the main things is they're trying to see practically how do you use data to help to validate your design decisions. So within whiteboarding, you don't have a lot of time or ability to showcase, okay, so this is how I take data from actual live people or actual competitors of what's happening to help drive why these decisions made the design or the direction that we wanted to go. So now you can take some more time to really understand what are some of those things that could really help make your designs more grounded in some sort of reality of events that happened previously. It's super important for us to do this because as designers, the reason why we do user interviews, why we do user testing, when we go and we want to share with our stakeholders, is to help make sure that these things are actually solving problems for people. So getting to show that you're validating and that you're showing how you're validating those designs is very much important, even if it's just a little bit in the research that you do. Another thing that you're going to really get shown on how you do and how you work in terms of a flow is to understand how do you prioritize your solutions or even the problems that you're getting. So unlike the first one, you're not going to have a whole lot of options that you're going to be able to explore because you only have half hour, an hour maybe to really get everything down and really get it cemented in some sort of framework where you could say, hey stakeholders, this is what you talked about, this is what we collaborated on, here are the results. But now you have so much time and so much freedom to go anywhere that you want to go with this design. You could be like, okay, so now my designs, I can go and think of the VR virtual reality, or if I do something like voice activated UI or augmented reality, or I could try and make the next Google or Uber or whatever they're looking for to make the next of these days. So because you have all this time to really think about that, they really want to make sure they know, like when it comes to bringing it down, scaling it back, something that we could actually work on even as an MVP, how do you take your brain from trying to do everything blue sky to something that makes sense and is actually attainable and feasible within a reasonable time frame of doing? It's so important as we're working as designers that we're trying to figure that out on a day-to-day basis. We're negotiating with stakeholders all the time. So giving yourself that little prep and work on how do you view that could really help with the interview. So another thing that they're looking for is to see how are your actual UX or some of your UI skills. Granted, we do have projects on our portfolios and we show them and say, hey, I did this X, Y, and Z, great. But when you have a time constraint, when you have to produce those artifacts, how do you actually perform under pressure? It's really different when we are having the luxury, when we're having a bunch of consultants, or maybe somebody looks at it and they tweak it because we have a visual designer or something to help make our skills look better. But this gives a more accurate representation of the work that we actually produce, not just a collective effort all the time. So it's not so much a way of saying, oh, you're not good because you can't do UX. It's be like, okay, now we know at least a starting base where you are, so we can work on this skill or that skill with you because your tendencies of being stronger as a designer may lean more to like research or maybe lean more to interaction design or visual design. But it helps that person understand how do you fit into team, how do you fit in the organization, and how you could both work together to improve that when the time comes on reviews and creating a longer plan for your growth. Another thing that is similar to the whiteboarding challenge, it's how do you respond to feedback? With the whiteboard challenge, it's somewhat easier to give feedback and not really worry about it because you know I had a time constraint of 30 minutes to an hour and I like really had to rush through some ideas that really gets things down on paper so that we could work with. But when you take it home, it gets a little bit more personalized. It gets a little bit more like, this is something that I just spent the last 4 hours on. How are you gonna give me any critique? Nah, I'm not about that. So you really get to see an essence of how do you detach yourself from your work, because the result of getting a better user experience is more important than it should be this way because I put in the hours for this. So how you get feedback on something that's a little bit more time invested is very important to know, to see, can we work with you? Can we really understand you and build upon that knowledge as we go forward? So here's a few things that we could do to make our take-home design challenge even better. So first thing you want to do is similar like what we did when it comes to the whiteboarding challenge, and it's to get questions that help clarify what the issue is. So you're going to want to make sure like, hey, based off of the brief that you gave me, I just want to know a little bit more about who our users are, what are their needs, what is the company looking to get out of this, how are they looking to measure their success for these, all those different type of things to help us get that understanding where we need to go and know, hey, we can't really do something that's super crazy and out of the box, or maybe we have blue sky thinking, so that opens our horizon and helps us determine why we went in certain directions, because it's coming out of the camel's mouth, or I guess the horse's mouth is what the saying is. So we know you guys said this as a business, we followed along with what you said, this is what we knew, we did our research based off of this. So it really helps you ground them for when the next time you meet them, you pull up the Spark Notes and be like, yo, this is what you said, this is why we went this direction, we could work on it, but as long as we level set with each other first. Another thing you want to do for your design challenge is think about what role or strengths am I trying to showcase? So yes, there's so many different areas of the user experience or even product design that we can do and we can showcase as, this is what I'm strong at, but you really have to start thinking of, am I gonna be doing something that's super UI focused? But if I'm not strong at UI, I don't wanna present my solutions as I can make really beautiful designs show up in that phase. Maybe you're somebody that likes to show a lot more of, you are really particular about doing research at the beginning, doing it at the end, being able to synthesize the results so everybody's on the same page. So you might want to tailor your experience around that ability of it. So you're trying to say, hey, we wanted to make sure that these are the certain touch points. We just kept it at wireframes because we're going to want to test this with our users and make sure we have the budget, or we did a test with them and this is what we found. So then the next stage is going to be visual design. So it's really figuring out which part of the experience you're trying to make sure is most important and is good at showcasing your skills, is why you'd be good, because everybody kind of understands that we're a T-shape, that you're going to have one area that you're really strong in, and that could help carry your other areas throughout the design process. So for me, something that was really helpful for me when I started was my communication and presentation skills that I learned from acting and things before. That really helped carry those conversations, because then I could talk to them and I could be like, okay, let's have a conversation so we can get down to the results. Maybe my UI wasn't that good. Maybe my wireframes were second best to my communication, and my user experience, user research role was a little bit behind that, but my communication helped me to help fill in those gaps that I was missing out on. And it can happen vice versa. Just figure out, how do you want to communicate your strongest skill and base your designs around that strength, so they can see it's not a hindrance that you're not as good as those other areas, because you build them all up together. So one thing that I always like doing, especially when it comes to presentations like this, is prepare a quick slide deck. It's not going to take you that long. You already have the information as you're going to be going, but you want to make it so it's easy for somebody else to digest the information, and they want to know, how do you make it like a summary so that they understand. Things that I really find very helpful, at least in my presentations and the decks that I prepare, are providing the context. So what did business want? What were they looking for? What was the main problem that they presented to me initially? What were any of those user things that I found out, like who they are, what are they doing, why do they need it, and just prepare those insights. Let them know the technical restraints or any type of constraints that you had for the project, so that they could understand the reason why we didn't go and try to build a theme park of this is because the scope of what we had was like we had to do this in 4 months, and we have a dev team of like maybe 6 people or a staff of maybe 5 people. This is what you want to do to help ground them so they understand what is the business context, what did we know beforehand, for you to understand why we went this direction for the designs. And show any type of things that you did and be like, well, these are the main insights we did for research if you had time, all of that. Trying to put those into more context. The next thing that you want to do, the other thing that you want to make sure with that is put the exercises that you had included and add your wireframes at the end of it so you could easily redirect yourself over there or have it open in the background when it comes to presentation time. So this just really helps you move transition from, hey, do you understand why we're here for, what we're here for? Can I give you enough knowledge so you could see where my brain was when we thought about this? And now here are the end results of that labor of putting this together. This can really help people ground, and they don't have questions about, oh, why did you do this? They'd be like, well, we went through some context, so the easy questions are already taken care of. Another thing, always good, double check your designs, make sure they're good, make sure you check line and spacing and all things like that. People get distracted about the simple things on, oh, why did I move a pixel? Or did I move down? Or did I move like a different shape for this? So just double check your designs, make sure it's consistent, because you don't want your designs to be judged on by, oh, what made you do that? And you'd be like, oh, I forgot. I didn't double check it. I made a mistake. Like, who cares about that? We care about the other contexts and things. So be prepared to show, also be prepared to show the wireframes and the prototypes that you have most success with. You don't have to always show the full experience if you feel that it's not something that needs to be shown. Like maybe you would take out the parts that are login because it's not as serious, and you just go fully on the experience of like a buying and purchasing flow. Make sure you focus them on the areas that you want feedback on and you think are really important to the overall brief, so that they have a correct context of, this is what we're working on, we're super focused, we get feedback, we could talk about it and not go into weeds of, oh, why don't we have 2 email paths? Like, who cares? That has nothing to do with what we're here to talk about. And another thing is, treat feedback as a way to do collaboration, not as a referendum on your skill level, or wait for them to be like, oh, you're not that good, or you're this bad, and when I give you feedback it's because you need to do this. It's all working together. We know when we go through the process, especially when we don't have a lot of time for a project, that it is usually worse. If you ever saw that Spider-Man video where you have 10 minutes versus 10 seconds to draw it, we know there's not enough time, there's only so much you can do, so don't worry about your skills being reflected. Just try and stay as open and collaborative, because again, it should be a throwaway exercise of just to see how you do things and how your brain works. Now that we went through a lot of the tips, I want to let you know on some things that you should be very cautious of, especially when you're doing a take-home test, because this happens to be a lot more prevalent there than a whiteboarding challenge that's like low risk, find it out quickly and just get it done. The first thing you want to do is make sure that whatever you're doing the design challenge on is not closely related to what the company actually does. So if we're doing a company for Formula One and we're trying to get them an experience that helps them become part of the training courses and help build a website and so to bring and attract those people, we don't want to go and have a design challenge of, oh, so let's just do a design challenge of how you would make a new racing website, or how would you change our racing website to now do this or that. That's something that is very cautious, because they just could be looking for free design work, and I do not abide by that as being a good thing that you should do. This should be testing skills on how do you collaborate in more of the softer skill approach, not really, and it should be stuck like that. So it should not be something where you're like, oh, yeah, let's just try and find something that's close to our solution, that's close to it. That's not really something that you want to work with either, because they probably don't even understand how design works. And that's a bit of a red flag where it's like, no, I'm not going to do that for you. Another thing that you want to be aware of is, because you have more time, because we know you want to be pixel perfect and have a solution that blows them away, remember, again, you do not have to be perfect. You can get a solution that works for the prompts that you had, answers the questions that you were provided answers for, and that you have on the behalf of your designs, but you don't have to find a solution that's going to be taken into production tomorrow that's going to help raise $200 million within the first month and just be something that the world is going to be revolutionized by. That's not the purpose of it, so try not to take that pressure on yourself when you're doing these challenges. We just went over the second design challenge that you could possibly go through, which is the take-home challenge. We have one more to go, so stay tuned and really test out these things, put these things into practice, because regardless of how we want the industry to move, these are things that are very practical, that companies are trying to see as very valid ways of finding things out. But make sure you don't fall for those pitfalls and you take these tips and you go ace that thing. You want to contribute to this conversation and you have other tips or pitfalls that you have to worry about for design challenges, maybe even examples of where you've seen things work well or not, leave some comments below. You're going to help somebody else, I guarantee it. So let's just share this knowledge and help continue on this journey together as we become better versions of ourselves. Peace.